Okay, so you've brought us this UN report governing AI for humanity, and it sounds like it cuts right to the chase, huh? How do we make sure that AI benefits, well, everyone?
Yeah, and what I find really interesting is the sense of urgency in the report. It's like this isn't some far-off, sci-fi problem.
Right, right.
It acknowledges, I mean, they fully acknowledge the incredible potential of AI. We're talking breakthroughs in medicine, really pushing the boundaries of scientific understanding, maybe even tackling climate change, who knows. But at the same time, it's like we're at this crossroads.
Okay.
Incredible opportunity, but very real risks too.
So when we say risks, what are we talking about here? I mean, is this the robot uprising we always hear about? Should I be worried about my toaster turning on me?
Well, I wouldn't worry too much about the toaster just yet.
Okay.
But, the report does mention concerns around autonomous weapons, for example.
Uh-huh.
But it goes beyond, the killer robot scenario.
Okay.
It digs into some really, really subtle issues like the potential for bias. Like, think about algorithms used for loans or even job applications.
Right.
Or the spread of misinformation, but on a scale we've never seen before.
Wow.
This report really wants us to get ahead of these problems.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, like really amazing potential, but also some serious things we need to watch out for.
Exactly. And the report really boils it down to these, what they call governance gaps.
Governance gaps.
Yeah, essentially we're talking about like a lack of rules, institutions, accountability, all those structures you need to kind of steer something as powerful as AI in the right direction.
So you're saying we don't really have a roadmap for this?
Not really. I mean, imagine trying to launch a rocket into space without a control center.
A recipe for disaster, probably.
Right. And this report is saying, hey, with AI, we need that control center.
Well, let's talk about those gaps then. What are some of the biggest ones that they're highlighting in this report?
I'd say one of the sort of glaring gaps is this lack of, global coordination.
Okay.
This idea that we can't just have individual countries or even powerful tech companies figuring this out on their own. We need something bigger, something more joined up.
It makes sense. I mean, the internet doesn't stop at borders, right? So why should AI rules be any different?
Exactly. And this actually leads into another massive point the report stresses representation. The power to shape AI right now, it's pretty much concentrated in the hands of just a few wealthy nations and these big tech companies. That leaves a lot of people out of the picture.
Yeah. The global south, marginalized communities, you name it.
Exactly. And if we want AI that works for all of humanity, well, you need everyone at the table.
Right. Everyone gets a seat. So we've got everyone on board, theoretically at least. But with all these different countries, different priorities, different regulations, how do we get everyone on the same page? I mean, how do we even begin to do that?
That's where this idea of coordination comes in. The report's really hammering home that we need much, much better communication between all these players in the AI world. Existing initiatives, institutions, they need to start talking to each other, working together.
So it's not enough to have everyone in the same room. They need to be talking to each other, collaborating.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just end up with this, well, frankly, a mess of conflicting regulations. Nobody knows who's really in charge, and that's not good for anyone.
It'd be like, I don't know, air travel, but each country has its own safety standards.
Yeah, and nobody wants to get on that plane.
No, thank you. So it's pretty clear we need some solutions here. Does this UN report just lay out all the problems, or does it actually give us something to work with?
Oh, no. It definitely gets to solutions. And get this. They lay out 7 concrete recommendations.
7. Okay, so this isn't just like a vague wish list. They've actually thought this through.
Oh, yeah. And some of them are surprisingly ambitious, I have to say.
All right, well, let's hear them. Recommendation number 1, what's the starting point?
So the first one's all about establishing this, well, I guess you'd call it a solid foundation of knowledge. The report calls for the creation of an international scientific panel on AI.
So, like a global brain trust for AI, what would they actually do?
Think of it like the IPCC, but for AI. Constantly assessing AI's capabilities, the risks, the opportunities, all of it. And then they'd be providing these unbiased, scientifically grounded recommendations to inform all these policy decisions.
So they're the ones like separating hype from reality in a field that moves so fast.
Exactly. A trusted source of information in a world that's increasingly, driven by algorithms and data.
I can see how that would be helpful. All right, what about recommendation number 2? What else is on the table here?
So this next one, it's all about inclusivity. They're calling for an inclusive policy dialogue at the UN.
So like a global AI summit, kind of? who gets an invite to this thing?
Well, it's more than a one-time event. The report talks about having like regular forums where all the UN member states would have a voice, obviously.
Yeah, makes sense.
But also tech companies, researchers, civil society organizations, anyone who has a stake in, where AI goes next.
So a space for like open dialogue, real debate, maybe even some, I don't know, healthy disagreements about how we move forward.
Exactly. Think of it as a global town hall, but dedicated to AI and how we govern it.
I bet those conversations could get pretty interesting. So we've got, expert knowledge from that scientific panel, and then this global dialogue happening at the UN. What's next?
Well, this one's really practical. The third recommendation tackles this issue we've already touched on, standards.
Right.
Or the lack thereof. They're proposing an AI standards exchange.
Okay, so this is about getting everyone on the same page, like literally speaking the same language when it comes to AI.
Yes. No more confusing jargon, conflicting definitions, that kind of thing.
Oh, crucial.
It's crucial, right? If we want to build trust and make sure we're all like literally talking about the same things when we talk about AI.
Because otherwise, it'd be like trying to build a house, but everyone has a different idea of what a wall is or a window.
Exactly. It would be chaos. So this exchange, it would bring together, everyone involved. Standards, bodies, companies, researchers. The goal, to create that shared language for AI.
It sounds like a huge task, but definitely essential if we're serious about avoiding a total AI free-for-all.
Absolutely.
Okay, so 3 recommendations down, 4 to go. What does the UN have in store for us next? What else is on the to-do list?
So this next one, it's about this thing called the capacity gap. It doesn't always get as much attention, but it's crucial.
Capacity gap. You're talking about how not all countries have the same resources and know how to develop and use AI responsibly, right?
Right. And the report actually calls for a capacity development network to address this.
So that's about making sure that everyone's equipped to deal with AI, not just like the wealthy countries or the big tech companies, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about supporting developing nations, giving them the tools, to develop their own AI expertise. So they're not left behind in all of this.
Because if we're calling this like the 4th industrial revolution, we can't exactly have a whole bunch of countries sitting this one out.
Right? Exactly. It's about making sure that everyone benefits and, that each nation has the ability to, decide how AI gets used, what its priorities are.
Not just being told what to do by like Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
I like where this is going. Okay, so that's number 4. What about recommendation number 5? What else is in this ambitious plan?
Well, building that capacity, it takes resources, right? That's where the 5th recommendation comes in. A global fund for AI.
Because all this talk about, AI for good is great, but you need the funding to actually make it happen. What would this fund actually support?
So the idea is it would give financial assistance, especially to developing countries, help them get access to the infrastructure, the training, the data, all the things you need to develop and use AI responsibly.
So it's about making those benefits of AI, actually reach everyone. Because if half the world can't even afford to get in the game, that's not really an AI revolution, is it?
Exactly. And it acknowledges that, building a more just future with AI, well, it requires more than just good intentions. It needs real investment, global investment.
That's a good point. All right, we're on a roll here. Recommendation number 6, what is it?
This one's a big one, a global AI data framework.
Data, right. The fuel for all of this AI.
Yeah.
But why a whole framework for it?
Well, think about it. You've got all these different countries. They've got their own rules about data privacy, data access, who owns what. It can be a lot.
A lot of potential for things to get messy.
Totally. And AI systems, they need a lot of data to function. So this framework, it's about trying to bring some order to all of that. It would promote things like interoperability, data stewardship.
Okay.
And really importantly, privacy, making sure people's information is protected.
So finding that balance between encouraging people to share data for the sake of progress, but also making sure that people's rights are protected.
Yeah, and making sure that AI development, it doesn't come at the cost of our privacy. It's a tricky balance.
For sure. Because the last thing we need is more biased algorithms because they were trained on bad data.
Exactly. We need good data, representative data, data that reflects the real world.
All right, we've reached the final recommendation, number 7. What's the grand finale to this ambitious report? What's the big idea they saved for last?
It's a big one. They're calling for an actual AI office.
An office? Like where?
Within the UN Secretariat.
Oh, wow. So like a dedicated AI HQ right at the UN. That's a statement. What would they actually do, though?
It'd be like mission control for AI on a global scale.
Yeah.
They'd be in charge of coordinating all the stuff we've been talking about, the panel, the data framework, the standards, everything.
Right.
Making sure they all work together.
So all these different initiatives, instead of being like siloed off, they'd actually be talking to each other, working together.
Exactly. And having that kind of central office, it also gives them a unified voice when it comes to AI on the world stage. Because right now, it's a bit of a free-for-all.
Yeah, everyone's talking, but who's actually steering the ship?
Right. And this report's making it very clear that the stakes are, well, they're pretty high with this stuff. We can't just hope for the best.
So if we can pull all of this off, I mean, what you're describing is a whole new system of global governance, really, just for AI.
It is ambitious. There's no doubt about that.
But you're saying it's possible, that we can actually shape a future where AI benefits everyone.
Well, that's the hope, right? And the report emphasizes this. No one group has all the answers here. This isn't about, a group of tech CEOs deciding the future for the rest of us.
Right.
We need all sorts of voices, different perspectives. That's the only way we're going to navigate this. It's a call to action, basically. And not just for, governments or tech companies. For all of us.
Hold on, you're saying I have a role to play in this, but I'm just one person listening to a podcast. What can I actually do to influence, the future of AI?
Don't underestimate yourself. That's the whole point of this multi-stakeholder approach.
Yeah.
Get informed about the issues, talk to people, ask the tough questions.
So it's about, using my voice, even if it feels small, speaking up, maybe bending a politician's ear next time I see one.
Exactly. The future of AI, it's not predetermined. It's something we create. And the more of us who are engaged, who are asking those questions, who are demanding better from our leaders and from these companies, well, the better our chances are of getting it right.
It's a lot to think about. So where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, I think that's a question for all of us to consider. What kind of future do you want to see with AI?
Yeah.
And what are you willing to do to make it happen?